All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. Welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Continues to be the number one show on innovative teamwork. Thank you to you listeners. Thank whoever sent you here because we are about to have a time. All right, to my regular listeners, you already know how I get down right to the point, and I have just gems of people. Shout out to Pod Match again for bringing the show, bringing the guests back on the show. For a while there, it was kind of strictly just a solo episode show, but once I found this platform, Pod Match, it is bringing some, and it's made it so a lot of great people have come on the show, including today. Miss Emily Schneider. And here's how I'm going to introduce you, Emily, because this is something, and we've had tons of guests on this show. This is something we have not had. I'm just going to read off the title. She is a freelance PowerPoint designer. Wow. All right. A freelance PowerPoint designer, something that, again, I'm not sure, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if that's even something you think of when you're thinking about a career or thinking of jobs in school and things like that. So you have a very unique perspective, and I've listened to you on quite a few shows at this point. You have a very unique perspective in terms of how you came about doing what it is you do. So we're going to get into that in a second. But first of all, just kind of give a little bit about your background, where you're from, and, a little bit about you, kind of get to know the audience a little bit.
Oh, thanks for that awesome introduction. And when you say it like that, it sounds like is this an oxymoron? Because I will say, I used to think PowerPoint was a bad word, and now I geek out about it. So maybe it is to some people. It still
Well,
is like a.
that's why I'm really curious about how, what it is you do, because before COVID, and that's I was listening to you before COVID, we didn't have so much interaction via the web, right? And now with COVID, Zoom has become accepted. Virtual gatherings have become accepted. Virtual events, virtual things, virtual presentations. And I actually was hearing, I hope I'm not stepping on your points here, but I actually heard you talk about how now you set up PowerPoints for businesses who want to invest and investors, and how their presentation is important. So there's so much that goes into these things that it's I'm just like a sponge. Like, please just talk to me,
Yay.
man, and walk me through how someone's able to come up with something so creative and serve the world in such a creative way.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so start from the beginning where I'm at. So I am outside of Chicago in the suburbs. And I wouldn't say I fell into this. I passionately and intentionally made choices to become a more strategic designer. I use the term visual storyteller. So I've always been enamored by stories. I've always been enamored by the way we connect with other people. I've always been a very empathetic human. And I've always been somebody who likes to touch and engage things and then break them. So I had to figure out how to put things back together. And what I realized over the years is that I have a very interesting way of how I see the world because of that. And so I naturally break things down into simpler information. I just see shape, I see color, I see things first. And not that I couldn't read early, but I saw shape. I always can I think my vision sometimes is I lie at my eye doctors because I'm I can identify shapes really easily. That's just part of how my brain works, right? But I grew up in the agency marketing world. I went to school to be a visual designer, specializing in graphic design. So being strategic and making choices to help other people digest information was part of my learning, right? Again, it was a very different way because it's all from a visual standpoint and it's all based on the computer, and I used design because it was clean. But what I found was that in the agency world, and I worked specifically in shopper marketing, which is about understanding human behaviors, how we engage and what we're looking for at a point of purchase. And this was way before COVID. So this was all in store, right? At shelf. And how do you choose between two different brands of the same thing?
Yeah. Or
Right. And
in a Pepsi,
exactly what's right. Because a lot of times people know they want the brand, and they may have they may favor a brand, but sometimes it's based on price, or it's based on offer, or it's based on something compelling, right? We've got to capture them. We make so many decisions every day. We're always information is always coming to us. So how do we make life easier for people? That's always been part of my design journey. But what I found was that it wasn't so much about the end consumer that I loved helping. It was my clients directly. And it was setting up the work so that they understood our intent, our purpose, our reason, what the thing we wanted people to take away was. And when I started being able to be involved in those presentations and designing them to set up the artwork, I was like, that's where I started to identify my sweet spot.
Yeah.
My dad randomly in my 20s told me that he worked in an insurance company, that they had a group of women. And I use that with air quotes because like now that just seems so wrong. But he's like, yeah, we have this department of women and they take all my decks. And he's writing insurance numbers. But the idea that like this was something that was there or they used that was really interesting to me. It's kind of always stuck. But so like I said, being an empathetic person, being somebody who understands and sees the world and breaks it down simply, I realized that I just really loved making these presentations and I would ask to be part of that every time I was part of a creative process. And then when I became more of a creative director, that's part of your role, is selling it. And so over the years, it's just kind of something I've really enjoyed doing. And I went on my own about 5 years ago to be a general freelance designer, and I got all types of work. Again, having just a graphic design background, that opens up like you could be marketable to a lot of people, but really you're kind of in the marketing and branding, sometimes communications world. And what I started realizing that was when I got content and when I got information that was really about storytelling from a PowerPoint perspective, that was my zone of genius. I love simplifying the complexity. I love helping people feel more confident about their information. And when I can put that into more industries, I can help them lead conversations that drive business forward, whether it's in Zoom, whether it's keynote speaking, whether it's just sales or quarterly updates. To your point, also investor decks. There's so much information that needs to be told. We're sometimes told that more is what proves our credibility, but actually credibility is based on creating an authentic connection, creating trust, and creating that. I love it.
Take of the church.
Yes,
Thank you.
right?
I'm telling you.
And in the
So
end,
many of you guys need to hear that, by the way. It's very important that you guys hear that. All this information that you guys throw out there, again, we get it. You know your stuff. But when you're selling and you're making a presentation, you have got to make sure you make it digestible for your consumer. So go ahead.
And for your audience. So like I work, right? Like, and you threw out the example of like investment decks. That's a great example. Pending who you're talking to, the amount of information that they need is critical. Because if you give them too much information, you lose them, they're confused, or they start really pinpointing and picking out stuff that's actually not important. If you give somebody too little information and they need that, again, that's more of like a peer and update. They need those details to move probably forward on their business part of this or to do their work on part of this project, right? So if you miss those details, that's important. So part of my part of my process is really making sure that I understand my audience, my client's audience, so that I can help them guide that, right? Again, think about a keynote speaker. You don't go to these presentations and they don't have their script is not on their screen. It's an image. It's a feeling. It's a couple words that embark and embrace and support their visual story. When we can connect with people, we make authentic connections, we drive business forward, and we make impactful and informed decisions. And again, everybody wins.
Yes. And there's a couple questions I actually have for you. The first one initially, and I don't want to brush over the point that you made in terms of being a creative thinker as a young person and how that helped you engage in learning. So currently I teach at a school named the Center for Creative Education. And it's an art integrated school where we have actual teaching artists. We have people come in and teach them certain art projects, and they'd integrate it with a math lesson. They'll integrate it with a reading lesson. They'll integrate it with social studies lessons. Like the other day, there was some integration about how to they had to make an ocean, and one was polluted and one wasn't polluted. And then we turned that into a social studies lesson to say, if you were the president, if you were judicial, how would you fix the issue? So it all,
wow.
it's an incredible, I mean, if you're ever out here in West Palm Beach, you have to come take a tour. They would love you. They would love for you to come and speak to the kids. So it is a point. And the actual question is when you see that, how have you like seen it in your kids, or whether you've seen it with young people? Can you speak a little bit about how that helps people think more creatively? Because the argument we make to other schools is, hey, when you're teaching kids how to think creatively, now you're solving bigger problems in the future, because they're going to focus on what they want a whole lot quicker. They're going to know specifically, again, college is college, but now they know exactly where they want. There's creative ways of solving problems. So, kind of explain that a little bit, especially from your.
Yeah, I love that. So that like resonates on so many levels. So I have young kids, and actually they're both at camp this summer, and we they're at a Montessori school. And a Montessori school is a very kind of similar, or like very junior aspect of what you're talking about, right? Our younger education, I should say pre-education. But the whole idea that like our mind and our bodies, when they're connected, is when we ignite and when our brains work. I mean, there's so much science about just the power of going on a walk, not sitting behind a screen, meeting in person, right? When I get stuck, I go on walks. I get outside. I move my body, because when you can move, there's, again, I geek out about all the science, whether it's neuro or just physical, but when you can flush that through. But going back to your point of why creative thinking is so important at such a young age, and being able to foster it, it allows you to learn that, like, if you do something and it doesn't look right, you can fix it. Not fix it, but you can add to it. You can build on it. You can pivot. And that's the whole point of, like, when you ask young kids what they want to be or who's an artist, they all raise their hand. And if you say, draw a picture of an apple, everybody's apple looks different, because what we have in our mind and what we believe is limitless. As we get older, we start to be crafted and formed, or told to sit and say still, or think this way, or that's not good enough. And so I always love that the creative process isn't necessarily about that you did it wrong. It's about, did you consider? What if? Have you ever? And I love, and as an adult, I can own this, but like being a creative thinker and problem solver allows me to not get stuck. Whether it's how to like get through a moment with my children, how to solve a problem. Okay, I did that. It didn't work. Move on and see how I can build on it. And I think that, to your point, as you can create that confidence as an internally to then express yourself or help somebody else, it really does. You're solving bigger problems. And I find you don't have to be an expert in that topic, but if you understand how people think, and you can hear what they're trying to say and what their key points are, and you can pull that out, that's being a creative thinker, right? So yeah, I'm all about, how do you get your mind quiet, but also create something beautiful. One of my favorite ways to like do that with my kids now is diamond art painting,
Yeah.
especially like late at night before bed. We'll do that late at night for them. But like the idea that like it's very systematic, it's very calming, but they're using their hand and their mind to build something. Then they see it, then they have it. Now they have collections. What do they do with them? What's next, right? It's limitless when you can give them the power to create something and cheer and always celebrate it. Like, that's awesome. What
Yeah.
if you did it this way next time? What if you didn't follow the rules and you used any color? So I'm all about the what ifs. The curiosity, I think, is something as children we have. So again, I'm like so geeked to hear about your school and where you work, because
Yeah.
to foster curiosity and let people know it's so good to have that, and the duality of it, is so good. I also just saw Inside Out 2, which I think is huge on understanding how we work or how we think, and that duality and that feeling of what we need, and that they all work together to help build something better. Like, you can't turn something off. You have to keep growing with it.
Yeah, it's important that we foster the whole person. I tell the kids all the time, look, I suck at drawing, but art is so much more than just drawing little pictures and things like that. And if you go with the traditional school system, it's kind of being phased out. The aspect of art, the importance of art is being phased out. Like, the actual center
Yes.
has been here. The center's been around for 30 years, but it was just an after school program for a long time. And then they turned it into a school just recently. And that's what we're building now when it comes to donors. When we have people coming in, this is what we're explaining to people. In fact, it was Tommy Hilfiger. Tommy Hilfiger was here, and, he's a clothing designer. And
Yeah.
this creativity is the new wave. It's what needs to happen. This is not something that you could just shove off anymore, because as you can see, the world changes. Things move really quickly, and you cannot be narrow-minded. Let's say it again for the people in the back. All right. not be narrow-minded in this world, and you cannot teach the kids to be narrow-minded, because I see it every day. The young people who are just narrow-minded, they go to school, they will actually waste your college money because they're going there, but they're just making it's kind of just going through the motions. And now you have this degree, you have no idea what it is you want to do because you haven't teaching them how to creatively solve problems. And
and how to think bigger, right? Like how to
think bigger,
dream bigger. And again, and I think it's something like you have to teach, you have to practice, you have to reinvent.
Yeah.
I feel like in the past 3 years, I had to reteach myself how to think and how to dream. How I got here was a dream. Like, I love doing this. What if I only did this? How could I help more people? But I got to go back to your comment.
Yeah, those are the questions you have to ask. But go ahead.
I got to go back to your thing where you say where you're like, you can't draw. So like, I think the other thing that we have to remember is that success is all based on what you consider successful.
Yeah.
So like, I cannot draw. I also am not a drawer, but I do think I am a very strong creative person.
Yes.
But but like my pictures, when I draw something and somebody can identify it, we play Pictionary here too sometimes, and my kids will laugh at me. But like when they can, and like sometimes I can't, it doesn't work, and sometimes it does, but it's about that confidence. It's what is successful. You can have one podcast and think you're successful, or like you said, you could be the #1 top show, and that's success. We all evaluate it different. So I do want to say I think that's part of the creative process. That's just something that comes with it, is the ability to, how do you see something and being able to spin with it? Like I started in ceramics in high school. So it was like you built something, and if it didn't work, you had to build around it. You kept forming it until it got to what you wanted, or you evolved it until you were like, okay, it's great. And so I think those limiting beliefs get really, they get hard. Again, truth is truth. Like if you don't want to be a good artist, that's fair. But I think that we have to make sure that we empower people to believe in themselves, and then also raise your hand and be like, I'm not that good. I have an idea. I need somebody. And that's where I come in too. Coming with my clients is like, they have great ideas. They can't get them out, or they can't transcend them into a powerful story for their business case or their needs or their conversations. And so I can come in as like a little secret, arm and say, okay, let's do this together. And being collaborative is huge in the creative process too.
And ultimately too, we are, as creators, we're always slammed with a dilemma. We're always running into this clash of, I have a business coach, and he uses the term artist versus entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, you have to make money. Your thing is making money. As an artist, you have to be a creator. And when you run into these clashes, when you run into these situations where it's like, do I really need Emily? Like, do I just want to focus on making the money and teaching my kids, or teaching a school that is going to make it so money's the bottom line and the whole creative process is kind of dismissed? How do you deal with that tension? How do you deal with that kind of that tug of war that's inevitable, because again.
That's a really good question. So I feel like it's twofolded, right? Because I am super transparent that I know not everybody can invest the time and the money it takes to work with me to build that presentation. And not every presentation needs that investment. Like there's a financial investment. However, when you can invest the potential to get the answers and the growth that you want, again, talking about investors, when you can invest a couple $1,000s into your pitch deck, when you show up to that meeting and you're more confident, your story is more solid, you can lead the conversation, you can guide them along, so that in the end, they're making the decision that you need them to make, and you've driven them to make it hopefully in your favor. That's like unlimited potential, right? Like so that now all of a sudden your pitch deck is this strong, powerful tool, and you're getting the people who want to invest and say, I trust you, I believe you, let's go. But I also am totally, again, aware that like you can't always hire me. So I have shared my tips, my resource, I call it my 4 tips to craft a powerful presentation. It's on my blog, on my website at IamEmilySchneider.com.
Right.
And I break it down to 4 things, because I want people, even if they do hire me, to have this kind of mindset, or to think and to plan ahead as you're building your story, or as you're refining it, will only make it stronger. So if you take one thing away, like we talked about the audience, how much information I give them based on who they are and what I need them to do, that's going to be a huge win. If you can add in, the second one is about crafting your narrative, setting it up with the end in mind, and then walking people through it, being the conversation conductor. I love the term. I love thinking about it as an orchestra, where like the conductor lays the beats. He tells what instruments to play, how to play, right? When to get loud, when to get soft. If you can lead that as how your audience is engaged with you, you can drive them along to feel what you want them to feel and to do what you want them to do. Design comes down to simplicity and consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And then your delivery, when you have all those things, your delivery just shines because you're more confident, you're more eloquent, you're going to say less is more, and you're going to engage your audience. And now you've just created a win for everybody.
Yeah, so well, you actually kind of just beat me to it. So if someone is listening in and they want to work with you, what is the actual criteria that you're asking from them? Because I'm sure you're not because again, you know your stuff, you're not going to just work with anybody. What are you sort of looking for from the people that are, interested in becoming a client or interested?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I work with a lot of business leaders, C-suites, somebody usually in a leadership position or director role who has a story or an update or some kind of business information that they need to share out and get other people to buy in so that that product, that business, those decisions can move forward. It can be internal, external communications. It can be investment decks, pitch decks, sales decks. I'm helping with rebranding. So like when a company has rebranded, but they need to set up their templates for PowerPoint, because again, everybody in business world really uses PowerPoint. It's like right. One of the most popular tools. What I require in order to get started is that you have an understanding of who your audience is, where you're going to be delivering this, and what your story is. I will take an outline. I will take a deck with a bunch of words, and then I work with them to understand what they're trying to say and to break it down. A lot of times, to be honest, usually people come to me and it's like a compilation of a bunch of different decks that they've already worked on, and they need to streamline that story. And so we do that together. And it's a balance of understanding what their story is. I make them walk me through it, not like a word for word, but like I need to know the cadence. I need to understand what is most important on each slide so that we can look at it from a totality standpoint, individual. And then I'll come back with a couple slides, say, does this feel right? Is it looking right? Does it sound right? Can you get behind it? And then we build on that together, and then we usually go and finish the rest of the deck. I mean, and that's like a typical 10 to 20 page presentation, right? And within like 2 weeks, we've got a really strong piece of a product for them to turn around and use, and hopefully also repurpose. I make it so everybody can edit. Like that's the beautiful power of PowerPoint. It's like they don't have to reach out to me and be like, oh, we had a typo. It's like, great, you can edit it. You can use this slide if you want to change the content because you're talking about a different quarter and you need to show different results. But yeah, that's how I
and that leads me to one of the main things is that I hate actually have to talk about this because I'm not a big fan of social media. I get it's a necessary evil, but you have to incorporate, you have to deal with what social media brings to the table in your business, specifically when you're talking content, when you're talking influence, and when you're talking, I guess a business owner would consider you versus paying an influencer. How has social media at all affected your business or affected the way you reach out to clients at all? Like how has this monster, this beast of social media, how has it affected what you do at all? Or if
it is such a monster, isn't it? So I really stay focused, to be honest, on LinkedIn. I use that as my business platform. Yes. That is, to me, the social media where people are looking for business connections.
Thank you. Okay, please, listen, because all the other stuff is such a distraction, and we get lost in the weeds of the other stuff, right?
And like people don't go on Instagram to grow their business, like my clientele, right? They're not on Instagram looking for business tips and insider information or facts. They're looking on LinkedIn and Google, right? Like I mean, I guess you could also, the other thing that I feel like is like, you could also mention is like AI, right? I always like, people always ask like, how do you use AI?
It'll take us beyond the hour.
Yeah. But in the same, if you look at it like a partner, I use LinkedIn as a resource to help me connect better with people, to show my credibility, to say what I want to say, not only to talk about what my knowledge is and my expertise, but also for people to get to know me as an entrepreneur. One of the things, and I've had conversations with my own business coach about like, when do you grow, right? How do you become a business versus just a solopreneur? And I said, right now, I love that I'm connected to all my clients. I know that my energy, my passion for this work, I haven't actually met anybody who's doing my work who's this passionate.
Yes.
So there's designers out there, but they all hate PowerPoint. Again, they think it's like a bad word. And here I am being like, no, I love it. It
Yeah.
is the medium that
Against the
gives
grain,
me
right.
the safe boundaries to be creative, to bring results to people, to make people feel empowered to do their work. And when I can shine, and then I get somebody else to shine, that's the win. That's why and how I discovered I love PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Somebody took a risk on me and hired me as a freelancer after hours for a couple years. And I just loved every time I got on the phone. His name is Nate Hasley. He would get on the phone and be like, this is amazing. He was a data scientist. He had no idea how to tell a story.
Yeah.
But anything I did was so awesome for him. And it gained, and he kept, ranking up his confidence. And that is the passion and the drive. And that, to me, that's success. Like, I don't necessarily have data numbers on, okay, this presentation earned this much more money for businesses. I'm working on that. I know that's important in a business world, but my success is driven by how my clients respond and what they say happened when they used that deck, how the conversations went, how people were engaged, and what they heard is
Yeah.
so much more important to me. So
Yes, and it's so important that I'm glad you said that, because it's important that you stay focused. I mean, PowerPoint is something that's been around for a long, long time, and she didn't allow herself to get distracted with all these other things that social media and the internet creates. I remember actually I had a previous guest who is heavy into SEO, and I was telling them, look, everything we see online is just an extension of an email. But we like to complicate it. We like to make it like it's more than it is, but it really actually is just an extension of email. And to think about, now you got me thinking about when I was in elementary school, there was actually someone that came in and just taught us how to use PowerPoint. It was maybe, but this is a long time ago. And again, PowerPoint will stay around. Find things that are going to stick around for a long time, the foundation of it, and then build your business, plant your flag from those perspectives. And that's what you have to do. All right. Then this is what you guys get on this show. You get a actual lesson, a tip on teamwork, and a tip on how you can build your business up. But you have a thought?
I do. I was just going to build upon that. So it's very interesting because actually over the past year and a half, I've changed my relationship with social media because of the way I was feeling and the way, and there's now this amazing book called The Anxious Generation that I want to get my hands on. That's all about how social media is changing our mental wellness, especially in our kids. But what I can say is that we're learning, and just in our day and age, how we have everything at our fingertips and the need to constantly be stimulated, constantly be changed. And that's also why I think my work is really important, because I can take, again, understanding neuroscience and human behaviors and how we engage and what keeps us interested, and I can start to apply those foundational principles into the storytelling aspect of PowerPoint. Using color blocking helps people resonate. It helps them see things, similar image styles, similar movements, right? Again, we're used to seeing things happening and moving and changing. And so if we can bring that into a world and lead that conversation and guide it along, it's a win. And so I do find that there's some interesting facts about how the addiction in social media and that endless, like mindlessly scrolling, like I get curious on why and what is happening. It's the colors, it's the motion, it's the sound, it's the right. And there's something there. And so if I start to pull in some of that, unconsciously, I should say, but I do find it interesting as I work on my own
I have
self-growth.
well, like you had mentioned a coach, I have a coach too, and he calls it a shot of dopamine every time you see a like. A shot of dopamine every time you see a like, somebody interacts with your stuff or whatever it is. Doesn't matter what the reason is that they're liking it, you just get a shot of dopamine that your stuff is being liked, and that can lead to some really, really bad mental health issues if you're not
hence why I had to change my relationship and kind of break up with social media, because that's not the drive. Again, that's not the driver of success. What is success to me? And
what parents, well, I'm glad you're saying that, because as parents, it is that much more important. You got to step in at this point. You cannot be that one that's actually creating the problem. You got to step in and control it, because it's going to lead to a lot of anxiety issues, especially when your kids see you out there on social media acting a certain way. So it's very, very important for you, because they're seeing this stuff, and the kids watch, they see absolutely everything. So I do want to actually be very respectful of your time though. So I appreciate you coming on. Is there what's next? What do you see, doing in the future? How can people get in touch with you? The whole thing.
Oh my God, I love that question. I actually, that's like, I need to dream bigger. I feel like I've hit my sweet spot this year when I niche myself.
Right.
My dream is just to help more people and just make a bigger impact, to really connect with businesses who have stories to tell and need the help and want it, right? I want to work with people who want to move forward in their storytelling and become a little bit more, sophisticated or feel more confident as they share.
Yeah.
And then share that with their friends. And, I feel like there's always somebody who's like us, who's like, oh, they're struggling too. How can I help? How can I bring more clarity and more confidence into presentation within the business industry? So that's my big dream, but I'm sure there's like, I should articulate that a little bit better, but thank you for that prompt to get me going.
Yeah, I love it.
How to find me or reach out to me is I am online at IamEmilySchneider.com. And then you can also reach out. I'm very active on social media in a healthy way. I'm working on it in a healthy way, but as a business introduction and as a tool to chat with people, it's a great space.
All right. So, Emily, the way I close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You're back at I believe you said it was like your 16th birthday party where you designed your invitations for your 16-year-old birthday party. I want you to pretend that 16-year-old girl has come into the Zoom room, kind of give her some words of encouragement, let her know what life is going to be and all that. And we'll officially close with that.
Yeah, I would say stay curious, keep messing up, keep failing forward, and just do and keep moving in what feels true to you and what feels right. And when you get that energy or you feel that love and that burst of like, this feels good, tap into it, hold on to it, and then challenge yourself to do it differently next time.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Officially drop the mic with that one. All right. Fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.